we record the session, we typically do that
Okay.
and put it on our YouTube channel. In light of you leaving at 9:30, we often start with introductions of each of us, but I don't want to take a lot of time doing that. So if folks will permit, I'll just describe ourselves as a bunch of often longtime, not always longtime Natick residents, heavily involved in, with a strong interest in both local and national and global economic and environmental issues, also very heavy into volunteerism, and including a lot of climate related activities. So in the course of discussion, folks can add to their little bios, but I would say rather than take the time to do that now, let's give you the floor. And I'm see Deb has joined us, and Debbie, thank you for bringing Sabine to us. Here you go.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much for having me. So as I said to the early arrivers, I'm trying to use a software called Poll Everywhere. And you can either join the poll by texting Sabine V939 to the number 37607, or you can, if you're versatile with your laptop pages, you can also open another page on your laptop and go to pollev.com/Sabine V939. So if I'm doing it right, then it will work. If not, we'll just use the chat.
Does it have to be capital letters, Sabine?
No.
Oh, what is the question we're answering on the poll? Just to say we're here, or is there a question?
There's no question yet. I wanted to make sure everyone is in first.
Okay.
So if you have received some kind of notification that you are able to access the polls. Hey, Rick. See, some people are still.
Hello, good morning.
I wanted to make sure everyone has the information. Good morning.
Good morning to me.
All right, so I'm to the ones who just arrived, I'm trying to use a polling software for which you can text Sabine V939 to the number 37607, or you can also open another page on your laptop called pollev.com/Sabine V939. So let's see if this works, and we'll get started. So first of all, I should say that I'm a member of 350 Mass, and we have a website, 350mass.org, and I hope that all of you consider becoming a member of 350 Mass MetroWest, which is our MetroWest node, and Debbie leads it very, very well. And we just had a very excellent meeting last week about the finances of climate disruption. So make sure to find out more from Debbie. So the first question, I ask is, Greta Thunberg says, act as if your house is on fire because it is. And the question is, do you agree with that statement? And then you pick A, B, C, D, or E. Yes, very much so. Yes, somewhat. Possibly would be C, not sure, D, or no is E.
So do we just keep texting to that same number? Or?
Exactly.
Okay.
And just the one letter this time, right?
Exactly, just the one letter.
Okay.
So then,
what do you want to say?
So the fact that there is a result means that someone got in, which is great. The instructions are also again up on top of the screen if you haven't received them before. So you can text to the number 37607, and you can also use the pollev.com/Sabine V939 website, whichever is more convenient or comfortable for you. So
maybe if people don't want to participate in the poll, they could just shout out their answer, I suppose. But
that's fine too.
In the chat,
well, you can use the chat and A, B, C, D, and
it looks like a number of people have responded. I don't know the number.
Yes. So we have some answers, and it's clear that we're obviously a group that cares, which is what I expected since I was invited to speak here. So the next question is, are you acting, it should say, as if your house is on fire when it comes to climate change? So given that there's great agreement on this, the question is where you put yourself with regards to the action. So we have a little bit of variation here. And it changes, the bars change whenever someone else adds themselves to the chat, so to the poll. So so clearly there is a difference, right, between the strong confirmation of Greta's statement and the responses to what we are doing. And I'm very pleased to see that most of the time people feel they are acting as if their house is on fire, but of course it's also difficult to do that on a daily basis. Okay, and then one other question that I've been interested in is how often do you talk about climate change with your family? Because talking about climate change is one of the things we say is particularly important and done very frequently, not enough. So Yale Climate Communications, for example, has maps about the ways in which Americans respond to climate change, and they have a map where you see that a large portion of the country, 40% of the country, basically never talk about climate change. So I'm using these slides always at the beginning to say there's opportunity here, right? We actually have to, we know what to do. We just have to do it. And then one other question I have is, have you seen the movie Merchants of Doubt?
I've heard about it, but not seen it.
And you can again use the A, B, C, D, E. Okay, so that's interesting. We have lots of people active on climate, and the large majority has never heard about this movie. I always say that that is the most important movie for Americans to watch about climate change. There are many others, but this is the movie that explains to you why we are where we are with regards to action. Because we have known from science for decades why there is a serious problem. And this is the film. It's based on a book by Naomi Oreskes from Harvard, who's a climate scientist, climate science historian, and she co-wrote it with Eric Conway from NASA. You can actually find it on Amazon Prime if you have Amazon Prime, but I'm sure the libraries around here also have a copy if you're more the analog type.
Is it a recent movie, Sabine?
It's from 2014. The book is from 2010, and you probably heard of Naomi Oreskes just a few weeks ago because she came out with the study that proved that Exxon had known since the 70s what climate change would do. Right? She's the one she's basically been after them for over 10 years, and she and what's his name, Jeffrey Supran, who used to be her assistant and went to MIT, and now I think he's back at Harvard. So they're the ones that are doing this research, and they're the ones, on whose research the movie is based. So I think it's a very good movie to watch with your family when you next get together. All right, so I wanted to talk a little bit about climate activism in Germany, since I'm German, and Germany gets a very positive rep in the media typically for its climate action, and to some extent that is deserved. But I think it's also important to see why climate activism is so important in Germany and what it says sort of for the climate activist movement worldwide. So you probably have heard about Lützerath in the news lately, because Lützerath is a tiny little village that is adjacent to the Garzweiler coal extraction site. This is what this site looks like. As you can see, it's been active for a long time. And all of this was villages at some point, of course, and Lützerath now was the last village that was destroyed or is being destroyed as we speak, because there's 280 million tons of coal underneath it. And RWE, which is one of the largest, worldwide largest companies, fossil fuel companies, with a bad track record in terms of safety and health, it has the right to that land and has purchased all the parcels, has bought people out, basically. Climate activists had been occupying the village for over 2.5 years. And I went there in April last year. And so these are pictures that I took. It says 1.5 degrees means Lützerath stays. So 1.5 degrees, of course, as you know, is the warming that the Paris Agreement agreed to would be the largest warming we allow. And it is beyond a livable climate already. But unfortunately, the German government, which includes the Green Party, made a deal with the company to destroy the village and get to the coal, very much because of the war in Russia. I mean, the Russian war against Ukraine, because that until last February, Germany, as you know, was highly dependent on Russian gas, especially, but also oil and coal. And after the war began, Germany was pressured to stop buying Russian gas since they were funding the war, and in order to do that, they had to actually extend their reliance on coal and other fossil fuels. So the activists have been there for a long time trying to protect the village, and I was there last April with my friend here, who this is actually the new one, that was the old one, and taking pictures of this. And I wanted to also share a little video of the scene, because you really have to understand what the size of this extraction site is. So this is the field next to Lützerath, and the most jarring part, as you can see, is there's tons of windmills. So you have this huge coal extraction site, and we're very high up here, and that was kind of scary, but the demonstrators, and you have windmills everywhere. So there's this really jarring juxtaposition of, this is the village that is being demolished as we speak. So you have this juxtaposition of this huge coal mine, and then these windmills that make everyone think, oh, Germany is so, oops, no, I didn't want to hit that again, sorry. I was going to go further. And so this, just the last few weeks, the protesters tried to block the company from actually extracting the coal and demolishing the village. Here you see Luisa Neubauer, who I mentioned in the announcement to today's talk, because I just am publishing a translation of a book she wrote called Beginning to End the Climate Crisis, A History of Our Future, which I think is a book that is particularly good as a gift to people who are not yet activated, because it really explains why we need to get active and how. And it's written by two very young people. She's only 25, and she was just named as one of Time Magazine's next 100 leaders last fall. So she's really something. Here you see her together here on the left, together with Greta Thunberg and Vanessa Nakate and Helena Walinga. They were all at the Davos Economic Forum last weekend to demand that the fossil fuel era is over, and that the economic giants stop propping up and basically, following the fossil fuel industry in their work. So just a few slides and then I'm done. I just wanted to make sure everyone understands that, because we have this sort of this theory that, you know, we've made a lot of progress, and yes, to some extent we have. If you look at coal, for example, the United States has actually come down in its usage of coal for electricity generation, and Germany is now much higher than they're at 30%. So, but that's of course because we found so much gas, and the gas is often fracked gas and has been recently found to be no better than coal with regards to greenhouse emissions, because methane is so much more potent a greenhouse gas in the short term. I just wanted to show, since I wanted to also say something nice about Germany. So Germany's electricity generation is indeed, as opposed to the US, if you look at this, renewables make up 13%. In this chart from 2020, I found another one that says 20%. In Germany last year, it was 44% renewables, 5% nuclear. So it's a much smaller country, but it's the largest economy in Europe. And, you know, if Germany can do that, there's no reason why the United States can't do that. Here is a chart from last year that says we've got to 20% renewables. And of course, for Germany, it's now important to get off of coal. For the United States, that too. In New Hampshire, in Bow, we still have a coal-fired power plant. But our main problem is getting off gas. So to just depress us a little bit further, this is from 2022, the capacity of coal plants that are being constructed as we speak worldwide. So we see that China is the largest one worldwide. We have about 199 coal plants under construction. So I think there's a good reason, because when we look at the emissions, they're still rising, right? And we had only dipped after the financial crisis and now during the pandemic, and we're back up again where we were before, and the trend is not good. And the IPCC report warns that, you know, if we continue business as usual, we could get to up to 4.4 Celsius by 2100, which is an absolutely unlivable climate. So I hope that gets you all even more excited to take action, and I'm happy to take questions.
Gets us depressed enough, but yeah.
So I guess I have a quick question looking at some of your charts. I was actually, believe it or not, pleasantly surprised to see the US's share of renewables, because when I look at my energy bill, we have a little summary that lists all the sources, not that our power is necessarily coming from, but that as I understand it, that this utility sources its energy from. And I've never actually gotten out a calculator and added it up, because it breaks all the renewables down. So there, you know, this chart lists 25 different sources. But I wouldn't have said it was 20%. So I thought that actually was better than I was expecting. But here in Natick, we have an energy aggregation thing that the town does, and you can opt up to 100% renewables, which we have done, Doug and I have done, partly because we've tried 4 or 5 times to get solar panels on our roof and been rejected every time by the shape of our roof and shade and trees and what have you. But so that's the route we've chosen to get some green electricity. But last time I asked our sustainability director how many people in town had done this, it was like 100.
Yeah.
And that really depressed me, frankly, because it's, I mean, yes, if you're really on a very tight budget, it is more expensive. But there's a lot of people here in town who could afford another 2 or 3 cents a kilowatt hour.
Yes. And
And
you
I
know
guess,
what? Yeah,
I
you know
guess
what needs to be done? The city of Bottrop in Germany, they cut their carbon emissions by 50% in 10 years. And their decision was go door to door. People, even climate activists, are not getting active unless someone is in their face. You know, people do it because someone tells them, here, I'm making it easy for you, just sign there. That's how you get people to sign on. People are busy. They have other things to do. You know, if you send them a letter, if you send them an email, whatever, they just don't get their butts off the sofa. But if you go to their door and you say, here, you sign here, and you get 100% renewables, I think people would sign on.
Okay.
Carrie? You're mute. You're still muted.
Carrie, you gotta
You
come off
muted,
mute.
Carrie.
So it was actually a question for Sarah. So how recently did you talk to Jillian? Because we had table out at the farmers market, and we're really promoting the whole opt-up thing for a long time. I thought we were way above.
When did you do that?
Oh, there was 2 summers ago.
Huh, no, this was definitely within that, and I was flabbergasted that she said that. I absolutely was flabbergasted.
Yeah.
I think my answer to that, Carrie, is also, we always think, I'm a teacher, you know, and we always think we've said that, we've done that. We have to do things over and over and over and over and over. And we have to find ways to make it interesting for ourselves, because we basically have to repeat the same story. You know, I'm sure Pat knows about this, because I know Pat is the person who cleans up our neighborhoods with us. And it's just every year you have to start anew. You know, it's like working out. Yes, we know it's healthy. But if we don't have someone telling us all the time that we should do something, if we don't have the repetition, it needs the repetition.
I'm sure that Deb has probably told you about the organization that she and I and several others here put together back in at the end of 2017, 2018. In February, we had a first meeting, and we had countless meetings. We drafted a resolution. We had house parties. Deb had one at her house and with select board members there. The whole thing was, and we got town meeting. We got 98 out of something like 112 town meeting members to pass that resolution. Exactly 8 months to the day after our first meeting, and the whole thing was just to drive the sustainable.
And I think what we as climate activists, what we have to learn, and people who are activists of any shape, any color and issue, is that we have to keep going and keep the momentum, even through the frustration and the constant, depressing news. And it's, when I spoke with students in Germany, they were like, but Fridays for Future, which is, everything is for future in Germany, parents for future, scientists for future, everyone is active as a climate person. And they said, but they've been doing this for years and it's not working. So we're kind of frustrated. We don't think climate activism works. And I'm like, you don't have the right to sit this one out. You don't have, no movement, no social movement, no activist group has ever achieved great success in short time, right? I talk about the suffrage movement and how long women fought for women's rights, and look at Roe v. Wade. So we go backwards more than we go forward. So I think it's really important that we as activists and as climate people reinvent ourselves constantly, and that we give up the notion that we're going to stop climate change and then move on to other things, right? That's not how this works.
Greta Thunberg to get to where she is,
Yeah, and she just pounds it, just keep going, just keep one foot in front of the other, just keep going. That's how we make progress. And sometimes you look back and you're surprised at the progress you've actually made, because it's so incremental that it doesn't necessarily show up, but it matters, right? That's why I'm talking to you all, because every single conversation matters, and you speak to individuals, you speak to 2 people, you speak to your family, it matters. don't think it doesn't matter.
One last point about that. When we were having this table down in the common, I kept looking at parents that had young kids, trying to shame them into, opting up. And that seemed to work better than so many other people. As you pointed out, so many, it was just about the money. And I agree with you that 3 cents per kilowatt hour is a small price to pay to.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And this should be a no-brainer, but most people don't even know about it.
Yeah.
Look, I was surprised that so many of you hadn't seen Merchants of Doubt, but that's because it's an old movie. It's from 2014, and I think it's also, but maybe there's other questions. I just want to encourage people to not let go, to just keep at it and keep searching. And that's why, in 350 Mass, we're building community, because ultimately we're going to have to live with some really ugly stuff, right? And many, many people in the world are already living with that, thanks to our lifestyle. So what's really important, and that's why this is such a wonderful thing you're doing here, what's really important is to build community so that we can get through this together and also keep educating each other. And Brinley.
Hi, thank you so much for being here. This is awesome. So I have children and we talk about it all the time. And one of the things that we do to discuss it and to help get it spread is really talking about literally at hand the weather. For instance, my kids love to ski and we have no snow. And so we talk about it that way. We get them to share it with their friends. And I feel sometimes like it's a slippery slope because, I'm sure that a lot of the snow industry is really not good for climate change, but I still feel like it's a great way to express it. What are your thoughts about that type of use in communicating with people to get the younger people involved and to just get people involved in general?
I always say we need everyone to change everything. Any conversation you can have is worth it. The weather is a good way to start, because then you can distinguish between weather and climate and explain what the difference is. And then people notice the weather, right? It's way too warm in January. We have had way too little precipitation for forever. We have these weird warm Februaries and really cold Marches now due to the polar vortex. We have all sorts of things that people can see. My colleague Colleen Hitchcock does these citizen science things where people can actually watch and see the change in their own backyard. So absolutely. The other thing that I always say is, if you're starting to have a conversation, people will always say, well, what can I do? And I always say the first two things that everyone can do is stop food waste and increase the a plant-based diet. Those are the two cheapest and most cost-effective, also according to Drawdown from Paul Hawkins' book. Those are the two most effective ways everyone can take to lower their carbon footprint. Kat.
Okay, I unmuted myself. First of all, thank you so much. This was really informative, and I'm looking forward to looking up the Merchants of Doubt, because I'm curious about that now. I also have young children that pop into Zooms, but we talk about climate change in the context of my dad, who lives on Long Island in New York, and the massive flood from Hurricane Sandy and what it did to his house. And my daughter will talk about, if Papa moved to Massachusetts, then he wouldn't if he moved to our town, maybe he wouldn't have to worry about the next hurricane, or his car, got flooded. And she's only 6, but she thinks about things like that, and people that she knows in her life who their house is somewhere that 40 years from now will be unlivable.
Right. Yeah, my kids live in California, and we think about this all the time.
Yeah. I was also curious about, sorry, you go on.
Go ahead. No, go ahead. What was your question?
I was going to ask, with regard to changing consumption habits. I've read that, you know, like the pear that comes from Chile in the grocery store, it takes such a huge cost of carbon to get it there, but it takes almost an equal cost of carbon to drive yourself to the grocery store by yourself and buy a pear and then drive yourself back home in like a gas powered vehicle.
So those calculations are complicated. You know, it's also a question, how is this pear grown? Is it organically grown? Is it grown with fair labor standards? And all those things are also relevant. Sometimes you can buy local stuff that has been sitting in a refrigerator all winter, and that's not necessarily more climate friendly than a pear that is flown in from Peru. So it's really complicated. But I think the fact that you're paying attention, the fact that you are trying to support the local agriculture, the local farmers, the fact that you're thinking about where my food comes from, most people don't. Most people don't. We should demand that all the food that's in the supermarket is labeled as to where it's coming from. It should have a carbon footprint label now. That would be something, huh? So we should really, you know, you're obviously very sensitized to it, and that is the best you can do at this point. And then just keep asking questions, keep trying to, you know, find. We have CSAs, the community sponsored agriculture boxes for farms around in Massachusetts. I'm sure some of you are part of that. There's such wonderful things you can do to support local and especially sustainable regenerative organic farming that is good for the world. And, you know, because I just read an article this morning, you know, pesticides contribute enormously to climate change. So eating conventionally grown food is not only bad for you, but it's also bad for the climate. I guess I have time for one more question, then I have to run if there's any others.
Carrie, it looks like you wanted to, you're on mute
You're
still
mute.
though.
So I've seen Bill McKibben talk live, I think 4 times, and, you know, been doing that sort of stuff. Read The End of Nature 15 years ago, probably. But how is this new organization, Third Act, doing, and how is that different from just 350.org?
So I'm just putting in the chat that Bill is actually going to be at Brandeis for my book launch on March 30th. The Third Act is a wonderful way to get people involved who are over 60. And they actually have a big standout in Boston on March 21st, targeting Chase and other banks that are funding the climate crisis. I'm sure Debbie can give you more details about that. But yeah, it's wonderful. I mean, he understood that he had to sort of move on from 350.org because the young people needed to, you know, take the lead. And then he came up with this Third Act idea, which is, I think it's a great idea, because ultimately that is where the money is. That is where the voters are, right? And that is also, forgive me, where the guilt is, right? Our generation, I'm not yet 60, but our generation has benefited the most from the fossil fuel age. So it is up to us, and it is our responsibility to do everything we can for the young generation. So the baby boomer generation is really, you know, is a good target for Bill. And I think it's great that he's doing it.
Well, Sabine, I want to thank you very much for joining us, particularly at short notice. And thanks to Deb for bringing you to us.
Anytime.
Yeah.
You can see us on Route 9 with our polar bears every Saturday. So. Thank you for having me, and I hope to see you again sometime soon.
Yeah, join us any Monday that you've got time.
If I'm around, I'll be happy to.
All right, great.
Okay, bye-bye.
Thank you, Sabine.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, Sabine.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. So Deb, thank you for bringing Sabine to us. That's it felt so rushed compared to our typical sessions, but now we'll move on to you. Boy.
Oh, okay. Shall I slow down the pace?
No, not at all. No.
All right. Well, hi, I'm Debbie Marion, and I'm here on behalf of 350 Mass, MetroWest, which Sabina mentioned at the beginning of her talk, which is the local node of a statewide activist organization named after Bill McKibben's 350.org, and very much aligned with the goals of 350.org. And I'm also here on behalf of a local, very local group, hyper local, called EcoNatic, and some folks here are involved with that. And so I was very excited to see Sabina's talk because I know she's a great speaker, but I very rarely have the chance to hear her actually do what she does. And I'm sort of using it as an opportunity to be mentored into how to talk about climate with folks, some of whom may not always be as engaged as all of you are. So taking it from her lead, I thought what I would do is show you the econatic.org website and talk about, because it was first at one of these Coffee with a Purpose meetings that I suggested this would be a good thing to do. And some very kind folks said, well, we could help fund it. And because we needed a little bit of seed money to start to get onto the platform. So I want to show you now, a year or so later, where it is and where it's gotten to, and talk about how you can help. If you are interested, it would be something that would be very much fall into line with Sabina's question about acting like your house is on fire. So may I share my screen?
Yes, you should have the capability to.
Okay, great. You see, whoops. I think hold on, I have to fix something before I do share the screen. I have to go back there. Okay, so that's what I want to share. Okay, can you all see it?
Yep.
Yep.
All right, so this is the home page of it. And I want to just making it so I can see what I'm doing as I share. Okay, that's it. So this is EcoNatic, and what you're looking at is 3 photographs that we chose from what happened on the last Earth Day, which we rebranded, rechristened. We called it Earth Day All Around Natick, and we had a distributed selection of activities people could do to get involved in Earth Day. This one up in the left corner, it was the soap making for Planet and Self, put on by the Green Reads group. Some of you may be members of that group, and they had a soap making participatory demonstration, but they also had a display of all of the books that they've read about climate, which was quite impressive. And in the middle, you're seeing the banner that I helped make, which now accompanies me to activist protests. And I made that on Earth Day at an Earth Day art build that was at my house. And then the third photo is Pat Conaway and his crew of lovely people who are picking up trash along Route 135 near Roach Brothers. We are going to be doing Earth Day again. It will be April 29th and 30th, Earth Day all around Natick. And I'll talk a little more in a bit about what that will look like. And then in the middle of the screen, you have actions you can click on to learn more about things you can do, like learn more about electric cars or heat pumps, a good deal on green energy to switch to the community aggregation. And then there's a sign up, tell your story, which says add to Natick's Eco Score. And I'll show you that as we scroll down. Here it is. And this is based upon self-reported. People create a profile and report what they have done. and what actions they've taken. And as they continue to use the site, they can put items on their to-do list, or they can say that they've done something about taking action for the climate. So far we've recorded, self-reported individual actions of about 1,200 and 826 households participating, which is phenomenal for a start. Of course, we have goals, so that's why the donut is only partially full. We've set goals, and we're only part of the way there. And then at the bottom, we can highlight particular eco-friendly events coming up. For example, tonight or this afternoon, there's an energy assistance fair at the Morse Institute Library. And if you want to learn more, you can click on this icon. And now you're at the bottom. So that's the home page. And at the top, there's also a menu to go to all of the actions, all of the events, or to learn more about us. And here's the button to sign in and join as a member and start self-reporting your action. This website was designed on a platform that was built, a proprietary software platform that was built by folks that call themselves Mass Energize. And there is a website like this, and I think we have over 25 towns now mostly in Eastern Massachusetts, but there's also one in Springfield, and I think there's one in the North Shore. So it's the beginning of a movement to create a platform that is easy to populate with content, and have more and more towns participate. But it isn't just about participating in the platform that's helpful. It's also once a month we have a community of practice meeting, which is a curated meeting, sometimes with guest speakers, sometimes with discussions on topics of interest, where all of the communities that have a Mass Energized platform talk to each other. I'll give you an example. At one recent meeting, at the end, it was not part of the topic of the meeting, I raised my hand and I asked if there was anyone present who was interested in exploring getting school buses to be electric. And it turns out there were quite a few people on the call, and there were quite a few people from towns that are customers of the same school bus vendor as Natick uses. So it basically launched a conversation which ended up in 20 towns applying for a grant to get technical assistance from MAPC, Massachusetts Planning Council, I think.
Area Planning Council, I think.
Okay.
It's
Metropolitan Area Planning
They've
Council.
spoken to us.
Yeah.
So they have a grant program, and this is a grant for technical assistance to try to figure out how do we move from diesel powered school buses to electric school buses in a way that that benefits the towns and their budgets, but also the vendors and their business model. And so there are 22 towns hoping we'll get this grant from MAPC to explore the process it will take to change over to electric school buses. And that was all instigated by me just asking the question at this community of practice. So not to take—
Who's writing that grant, Debbie?
It's the town of Needham is the lead on it. And Jillian, our sustainability coordinator or director, is participating, but not as a lead grant proposer. Okay, so just giving you some background to the Mass Energize organization and why we decided to be part of it. We wanted to be collaborating with people in other towns who are also doing this work. So here's an example here's the page you go to for actions. And gives you some ways you may recognize some of these people, some ways that you can participate in things that are climate friendly in our town. For example, let's say you were interested in composting curbside pickup. If you click on it, you get more details. You get a description, you get steps to take, you get testimonials, but nobody's left one yet, but we have to encourage that more. We're just starting out. And if you need a deep dive, why is composting important? Why is it bad for compostable materials to fill up the landfill? If you want more information, it's here. So that's just an example of an action people can take. And when they're logged in and they say they've done it, they did sign up for Black Earth composting curbside pickup, that gets recorded on the donut graphs that you saw on the homepage.
And Deb, just if you've done that, but then you forgot that you did it, like if you go, does it remind you which ones you've clicked as already done?
I'm not sure. That's a good question. I'll
Yeah.
have to get back to you on that. It should.
Yeah,
You're right.
hopefully.
That would make sense. Here's the events, all events page, just to give you an idea. We have some events coming up. And you'll see this little icon shared. We now have, they're constantly evolving the platform. So we now have a way to very quickly share or grab what some other community has shared on an event. This is an event being shared by Wayland. And when you mouse over it, you can hover over it, you can see it's originally from Wayland. That's actually Sabine, a picture of her in what was her original electric car. She's now driving a blue Chevy Bolt, but this was her little smart car, and that's her sitting in the driver's seat. If you want to know more about this event, you click here. You can RSVP to get the link because it's online. It's a webinar about electric vehicles 101 to start learning about it. So that's kind of an overview to the EcoNatick website. I will pause there. I will maybe stop sharing my screen, and happy to talk about anything I have mentioned or more.
Looks like Pat has his hand up.
Okay.
Hi, Debbie. I was just curious about the organizations again, 350.org and then 350 MetroWest, you're all kind of connected, right? And Energize Wayland is I get a little confused about which one's which, you know.
Okay, yeah, let me set you straight. So the international organization 350.org was founded by Bill McKibben. And then some folks in Massachusetts decided to start 350 Mass.
Okay.
And they successfully protested to the point where the Brayton Point coal burning power plant was closed down. So they got rid of coal in Massachusetts. We still have coal in New England though, because we have Bow, New Hampshire, which is a terrible peaker plant. It's still, there are trains taking coal there every winter to restock that coal burning plant. So that's 350.
Sorry, just a piece of crazy environmental trivia. Do you know that there used to be mercury powered heating plants?
Wow.
Yeah.
Where instead of boiling water, they heated mercury.
Wow.
Wow.
Good that we've made progress.
So anyway, sorry to interrupt, but
thank you for that trivia. So to get back to Pat's question, that's 350 Massachusetts, and 350 Mass MetroWest is a local node of 350 Massachusetts.
Okay.
350 Mass. So there's a website for 350 Mass, and you can see what they're up to. They do a lot of work lobbying the State House. We had a great climate bill that we passed last year, and 350 Mass took a big role in getting that legislation formulated and passed through our legislature. If you want to know more about that, go to 350 Mass, which is a project that is supported by a nonprofit called Better Future Project.
I have one other quick question. Do you know anything about I think Mayor Wu is attempting to make mass transit, or at least public transit, free,
electrify
of charge in Boston, in some areas. I don't know how it works, but isn't that something that if we could get people out of their cars, their private automobiles somehow?
Yes, but I can't respond to that. I don't know anything about that initiative.
I see. I was just curious.
Yeah, I don't know. I know I've heard about it. I've read the news, but I don't know anything on the inside.
Debbie, on the EcoNatick site, I just wanted So I know you're encouraging certainly people to use it as a resource and to sign up or kind of register any actions that they've done. Are you also looking for people to kind of help
Yes, yes,
run the site or be involved in your core group? What if people,
yes.
what might you be looking for people to do for that? Or
Thank you. I will, yes, I will get to that. I didn't finish answering Pat's question though.
oh, I'm sorry. Okay.
So Pat asked about 350 Mass, and we have 350 MetroWest, which meets monthly online and gets involved in things like protesting in front of the Chase Bank in Framingham, wearing polar bear hats. Then to further drill down, EcoNatick is a team of local folks welcoming anyone to help us out with this project. We've built the website on the Mass Energize platform, and Energize Wayland is another website that is built on the Mass Energize platform and is part of our community of practice that I mentioned, that is collaborating on electric buses and many other things. So Energize Wayland is one. There's an Energize Framingham. There are a number of local initiatives that have a website on the Mass Energize platform like we do. So we've joined that band of players.
Okay, good.
And then to answer your question, Doug, yes, we have a small core team, but we could use a lot of help with all kinds of things, organizing Earth Day, tabling at various events, getting the word out about the community aggregation. I mean, Sabine mentioned door to door. If that's what we have to do to make community aggregation numbers go up, we need people who are willing to do that. I welcome you to come to our meetings. We're now meeting weekly to plan Earth Day and other things every Thursday morning at 11:30 on Zoom. And if you are interested in attending a meeting and helping with Earth Day and other EcoNatick projects, please join us.
Would you like to put the link to the that Zoom link in the chat maybe? Or
I can do that after I stop talking. I can't do that and talk at the same time.
maybe I could do it while you're talking. But
yeah, it's the same link as we used last week, Doug.
Yeah. Okay.
That's the Zoom link we'll keep using. Yes, Ricky, nice to see you.
Hi, Deb. Great to see you. As you may or may not know, I no longer live in Natick.
I do know.
I live in Canton at Orchard Cove. And when you brought up the example of composting, what came to mind is the enormous amount of food waste that I see in the dining room every time I go to dinner. What comes off the plate is significant. And I was, just casually wondering, on Mass 350 or 360, is there any effort being made to deal with larger groups than individuals when it comes to food waste and composting?
I don't know. There are so many corners of this climate activist world, and I can only inhabit so many of them.
Yeah, I understand, but I just wondered it.
I haven't. A 350 Mass is largely involved in things like getting good legislation passed at the State House, and getting large numbers of people to protest when needed about various things, because there are some serious problems with our electric grid, with who runs our electric grid. These really more big, overarching, wide things. What you're looking for is a local initiative, maybe a local group of, maybe there's a 350 Mass node near you in Canton. I know there's one in Franklin, and I know there's one on the South Shore. So, and those folks might know something about that. or you maybe should be asking the sustainability coordinator or director in your new town what's going on there, and how a big facility like Orchard Cove can opt in to composting. That would be the direction I would start in terms of investigating this.
I know, I don't know if Black Earth in particular operates in Canton. I know they operate in many towns. I don't know Canton in particular, but they do have, besides the little individual, as a household, you get your little bin, but there is a commercial option where you get a larger bin, like basically your indoor bin, it's like steps up a size, and your aggregating bin steps up a size. So
What's
I
it
know that
called? Black.
there are options generically, whether they're specifically available, whether Orchard Cove could participate in that one, or whether there's another company that does the same thing. I don't know, but
And it's called Black Earth?
Black Earth
is-
compost, and they make wonderful compost. It makes my plants grow green.
It's a company that does that we have a contract with in Natick to pick up at curbside, and other towns have it as well. I know Wayland has it, and
Framingham has it.
Framingham has it. All right, so I see some hands went up. I saw Brinley's hand before, but it's now down. Do you have a question, Brinley?
Hi, Deb. Well, I don't know if it's appropriate at the moment or not, but because you mentioned legislation, I was just wondering if you are familiar, if 350 does have anybody talking about legislation statewide in terms of composting.
Oh, I don't know
Now
in terms of composting yet. We're at the point where we're choosing our campaigns for the next legislative cycle. So I'll have to get back to you on that.
I just think that since, we were just informed that the two most important things we could do is watch our food waste and eat plant-based. It seems like maybe that would be a thing to put at the top of the list.
Sure. Well, that was Sabina's answer to the question. When you're talking to someone who's yet to do anything about climate change, and they ask you, what can I do? The easiest first step is to stop food waste and to adopt a plant-based diet. Sorry about that. It's my bird clock in the background there. So those are two things that people can do as a start, but they're not necessarily the most important things in terms of what each organization is good at. And 350 Mass is good at getting statewide legislation that affects the way a lot of people get their energy, use their energy, and can make a big impact on the Massachusetts carbon footprint. So I just wanted to clarify that's kind of, most important can be interpreted in many ways.
I completely understand that. I just meant since waste is such a big deal, and since our waste to energy plants are such a big deal, there's so much of that in our state. I was just curious if that is considered a part of all of.
Oh, for sure. Absolutely, it is. But in terms of choosing priorities, 350 Mass, as I said, is just going through a campaign proposal discussion. We do it from the grassroots up, and I can get back to you and let you know what the decision is once we hear all the pitches and make our decision as to what our priorities are for the next 2 years legislatively.
Thank you. I was just curious. Thank you so much.
Sure. All right, Pat.
Quick question about the organization. We actually had them come and speak at Coffee with a Purpose, 2 or 3 years ago. Elders for Climate Action, are you guys connected in some certain ways?
Well, we are connected in that there are a number of people who get involved in more than one organization and bridge that and liaise between them. So Elders Climate Action is another activist organization that is local, and I encourage people to check them out. They determine their own priorities separately, and if that speaks to you. I know Bill McKibben's third act is targeted at people 60 and over, not just because they grew up in the petroleum age and they have the money, but they also have the time to get involved in these kinds of things. So I think Bill McKibben has a good idea there, and that's a very dynamic organization. And I want you to, someone can put this in the chat, thirdact.org, because if you check out their resources page, they have a number of recordings of webinars on things like how to move your money from a bad bank, that is a fossil fuel funding bank, to a better bank, a bank that doesn't fund the exploration of more fossil fuel. Because the four bad ones, Wells Fargo, Chase, Bank of America, and Citibank, are responsible for more money invested in the fossil fuel industry since the Paris Accords than even before them. They have ramped it up. They're desperate, and they're obviously motivated by hoping to get return on their investment. We're trying to show them a better way. Rick Devereaux.
Yeah, one quick thing that might help Ricky and others, obviously, is that there are two aspects to food waste. One is scrap and compost. The other, I think, is, what do they do with the food that isn't used? And that's an easy question for you to ask them. They should be able to, in the kitchen, they should be able to tell you where the food that isn't used is donated, because that's just as important probably as food waste. But if you're on that side of things, read the article in the Globe magazine yesterday about the big stink in New Hampshire. And what the article doesn't say is that it's our food waste that's poisoning these towns. I mean, you read it and you feel badly for the residents on the divide, and the fact that these towns of where our waste is going, particularly our plastic. If you want to feel guilt, read the article, because we're all contributing to that. The other question I had, which is not just for you, Debbie, but in general, is I'm already logged in and have been to EcoNatick and participating in the Earth Day planning, et cetera. But I still get stuck in the site. So one of the places I'm stuck is, I realize I never added, how do I add to what the actions are that I already took? Because when I go on and try to do it, I get stopped. There's no way I can add that I added solar to the house 2 months ago, but it's not an action that I put on, and I don't know how to do it.
Okay.
Now, you can do that with me privately, but if other people are interested in navigating the site, maybe there's time for a quick tutorial to do something like that.
I would rather not take the time to do that right now.
Okay.
But I will get back to you and schedule a time when we can do that together, because I will be learning alongside you. I have been spending most of my time on the building side of it, not the using side of it. So I'm not prepared, actually, to navigate you through that.
Okay. Thanks for your honest answer. You're wonderful.
I'm only human, and I can only have so much time in the day.
One of the things I really appreciate about Debbie is that she knows her limits and spells it out, which helps all of us realize that we have limits and that we have to focus on what we can focus on. So this has been a great morning. I know Sabine, and I'm really glad that you suggested she present, because that's an awesome presentation. I'm excited about all of the things she said. So one of the things that affects my answers is on the survey is that she asked about the household. And one of the challenges I have is that not everybody in the household is as mindful as I am. And it's very hard to change the behavior of those who've been doing things the same way with you for 4 decades plus. And it's very hard to change any of the behavior, and you have to pick your battles. And so, I've had to pick my battles, and there's some that I just frankly lose, and it pains me to lose them, but it helps me to understand that you have to pick your battles. None of us, regrettably, are perfect. So.
Well, I can't go down that road. Don't have the training for that. Maybe we should start a branch of EcoNatick that is about family counseling.
Ecotherapy. Seriously.
Ecotherapy. I love it.
I love it.
And fair enough. I think we're all facing that when we talk to family members. It's you have to. You don't want to. You want to keep the relationship sound, and at the same time, So maybe by doing what you do, you can model behavior that will maybe someday catch on.
Yeah, that's what I'm doing, and that's what I'm living with. And I think I'm slowly bringing people, some of them, along. But
Good. All right. Well, you never know what's going to break the ice.
Post holidays with grandchildren here and everything else has been a very difficult time to stomach. So let's just leave it that way.
Fair enough.
From the waste point of view.
Sure. Carol, did
I will say that
I saw in, and I think I saw Carol's hand.
Oh, okay,
I'll come back to you, Sarah.
Yeah, that's fine.
Carol, you're muted. We can't see you. We can't hear you. I mean, we can see you. There we go.
Okay, so I have this book. It's called The Blue Zone's American Kitchen by Dan Mutner. And it has over 100 recipes that are based on a plant style diet. It's a beautiful book. The recipes are simple. It's not hard to convert to them. And I found it to be very successful in my own eating practices. So it's the Blue Zone's American Kitchen. And blue zones are also interesting villages in the world that have people living over 100.
Yeah. All right.
It's Dan Butner, and he's from National Geographic. It's a great book.
Excellent. Thank you for that recommendation.
Okay, thank
Great.
you.
Yes. Moving to plant-based diet is something that's fairly simple to do. And when you have good recipes, it makes it fun. But Sarah, did you have something to add?
Oh, I was just gonna say that, kind of getting back to what Sabine said, of this is an ongoing process with your grandkids and with waste and so forth. If they see you modeling it, Rick, they may not change today, but that they will incorporate that into themselves, and maybe when they're older, they will take that to heart. So I guess I would encourage you, don't give up.
Thank you, Sarah. My 20-month-old knows where the trash is, and you can.
There you go. Yep.
She loves cleaning up messes.
Yyep.
We're trying to distinguish between which goes in which bucket. That's going to be a long process.
Yep. But she'll get there.
So, yeah.
It's wild to think that people of that age are going to be here in the 22nd century.
Yeah.
Dealing with all this.
Yeah.
I read on the Framingham website, the Framingham Energize website, they put out a newsletter, which we may do someday when we have the bandwidth. And apparently at Framingham High School, they have started a composting program that is highly successful. And they're getting all the Framingham cafeteria students to sort their trash at the, in the cafeteria and composting what they can. So we can start a small initiative there, maybe at Natick High School, if that isn't already happening.
Brindley may have something to say on that, actually, since she's got the contacts into the high school. Brindley?
Excellent.
Well, I can say that I don't know how many of you know Terry Miller.
Yep.
Or not. Terry was chair of the recycling committee for all of those years that we had the recycling committee before it changed to the sustainability committee. Well, before it ended and we got a new committee, it didn't change. And for many of those years, I was with Terry on the recycling committee, and we spent many days at the high school, because she worked at the high school before. This is pre new high school. We spent many days there trying to help them do waste and recycling and composting in the cafeteria. And it's a very interesting challenge at that level. So I don't know. I seem to remember Jillian saying something about working towards that. I know that there are kids at the high school that are interested in working at that. I would love to know if that's started again with Jillian. I'll look into that with her, because I would be happy to go participate. I do know that we did a lot with Johnson School to try that for a while. It really has to be an all-in. It really has to be an all-in thing to make it work. Everybody has to be in.
Well, somehow in Framingham, they managed it. So they may have a story to tell, to share with us, a model we can follow.
Yeah, that would be
No.
great.
I know.
Debbie, I think Julian is the one who mentioned that at the last sustainability committee meeting. I think you were there. So I think she is, Brinley, working on that in some way, or knows somebody who is in Natick, or is looking for somebody who is. So I would definitely contact her.
I know at Johnson, years ago, I think it was when our daughter Liz was there, Johnson used to do a 1 or 2 day overnight event for the 4th graders. And I don't know if in the post 9/11 days they do this anymore, but I remember the place the kids stayed, they did a whole thing on composting wherein the kids weighed each day all the food waste, and they were encouraged, it was like this shock value of, you guys just wasted, 57 pounds of food. And over the several days they were there, they were able to, it's like, if you don't want this much food, don't take this much food, kind of thing. And they were able to reduce the amount of waste they were throwing away by quite a bit. Now, I don't know what they did with the food that got cooked and not served. That's a separate question. But sort of my point being to kind of turn it into a science experiment for the kids really made an impression on them. I remember them being just really, it was an eye-opening experience for them. And I think something like that of binding it into the curriculum might be a way to get at some of this.
That's great feedback, Sarah.
Great idea. I wanted to mention one other thing. Last week, 350 Mass MetroWest gave a webinar about moving your money away from the fossil fuel funding banks. And we did not record it because there was another recording of the same presentation. We had a guest speaker who was wonderful, going through step by step what you need to know and how to think about this, because it's not an easy thing to do. We even had a song playing in the background, "Breaking Up is Hard to Do" by Neil Sedaka. So in any case, we have materials now, a package that we're sending out to everyone who attended the webinar or who registered for it. And if there are folks here who would like to get that information and watch the webinar that was done previously, and if you want, you can dive as deep as you want into the materials. There's a whole folder of resources. The idea being that your money has a bigger carbon footprint than you have, because if it's invested in Citi, Wells, Fargo, Chase, or Bank of America, either by credit card use or by where your money lives, in what bank, then it is funding the crisis. So if you can move your money away, the better it is. And Bill McKibben's Third Act is doing an action on March 21st. So it's being labeled as 32123, March 21st, 2023. So a little palindrome there, 32123. There's going to be a lot of stuff happening activist wise, protests and people cutting up their cards and posting videos. I have no idea what shape it's going to take, but I know that 350 Mass is organizing an event at Downtown Crossing to highlight this. And 350 MetroWest is considering having something happen in MetroWest to demonstrate our dislike of what these banks are doing. And if you go to Third Act, there's a pledge you can take that you will pledge to move your money if these banks do not change their evil ways. So I wanted to highlight that as another way to lower your carbon footprint. And we have put together the materials to the toolkit basically to do that. So I'll be happy if you want to put your email in the chat. I'll be happy to take those email addresses down and send out this package to any of you who are interested in this.
Cool. And Sarah, you wanted to.
So you may not know this answer to this off the top of your head, Debbie, but speaking of credit cards, I'm not a financial expert by any means, but if you have a no-fee credit card and you pay it every month, Do you know if moving that credit card to a different bank would really make that much difference? I just, honestly, I don't really see how the bank in particular is making a lot of money off that.
I can't answer that question, but I bet these materials can.
Okay.
And I think also part of it, it's not just about where your money sits, it's about sending a message en masse to these banks, like a boycott, a consumer boycott of these banks, saying, you know, I may be paying off my credit card bill every month, so you're not making any interest on me. But even so, the potential that I might run up a credit card debt to you, it will be removed when I no longer use your credit card and I move to a local bank for a credit card. So that's the idea behind it, is getting more and more people to send a message of disapproval to these banks, because apparently they don't, the profit motive is just too strong and they can't resist it. Yes.
If I could,
Carrie, I
well-
see Carrie's hand raised. Hang on. Carrie, I
Gotta
can't.
come off mute. There you go.
There we go. Yeah, to that point, I'm not sure about the interest, but every time an establishment, a business, you know, uses a Chase card or Bank of America card, you know, the bank gets a fee, you know,
Oh, yep, you're right.
like
okay,
probably like
thank you.
0.03% or more.
From
you
the
know.
business, from the
Okay.
vendor.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yep,
Thank
I
you for
forgot
that, Carrie. I
piece.
forgot that detail. Thank you.
Yep.
Great idea.
Yeah. And then
Uh,
Rick, you wanted to say something?
well, I was just going to add that I don't know this, but my strong suspicion is that the banks finance happens now so quickly that if you pay them, you know, they have your money before, you know, it goes out to the whoever you bought it from, for a brief enough time for them to use the float on that money in some way or another. Okay, so they're making money in more than one way, I'm sure, on the money.
Levered.
Yeah, they're smart about that kind of stuff. That's the business they're in.
Transactions times 0.03, you know, it's raking in money hand over fist.
Right. So anyway, I would be happy to share this information with any of you at any time.
Looks like there's 2 or 3 email addresses in the chat, Deb, of folks.
Yep, I've got that. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
So this is kind of the range of ways that the organizations I'm involved with can help people jump onto this bandwagon. Because I read last night, I was reading a book called Less is More, about the history of capitalism and how it has affected our climate. And in this quote, this is a really kind of like a good closing quote, although feel free to continue the conversation. It talked about how people, you know, original humans lived in Africa and migrated all over the world from there. We know this from the anthropological records. And the ones who went to, when they lived in Africa and then eventually Asia, early humans had this continent of expansive land, so many resources they could, you know, they didn't, they could just think
Live
of,
off the land.
their thinking had, you know, no limits. But then when they migrated to the Pacific Islands and in Australia and Malaysia and Indonesia and those places, this expansive view of how to live on the land had created a huge amount of devastation because they were in a closed system on an island. And they found that the ecology created starvation. What they were doing was not living in harmony and in balance with the closed ecosystem on that island. And some civilizations didn't make it because of that. But other ones who learned to live in balance with the ecosystem on the island did survive and thrive. And we're finding ourselves now, we're on an island, and that island is the planet. It's a closed ecological system, and we've exceeded its limits, and we're continuing to do so. And we have to scale back. We have to find a way to live in balance because we're destroying everything, including the atmosphere.
If everyone on the planet lived the same lifestyle that we did, we'd need 3 or 4 planets with all the finite natural resources to supply the goods that people want to buy. So it's we're on a collision path with destiny.
I just have found that to be a very apt analogy. It spoke to me, the idea of us on an island in space.
Good. Well, Debbie, thanks for being, hey, you brought us a twofer between you and Sabine. Man, it's like a double espresso shot from Monday morning of all the things we got to do to save the planet.
The double whammy.
Yeah, double whammy. But we're energetic. We will work on it. So I just wanted to mention to people upcoming schedule next Monday, after having to reschedule a couple times. Deborah Mitchell, our other Deborah, will be speaking to us, a review of what Natick for Black Lives Matter was up to last year, what they're planning for this year. I think she's planning on bringing a couple of her folks with her to that session, and I think possibly separate from Natick for Black Lives Matter, Deborah is also doing things with the community Common Street Spiritual Center over the course of the year, so she may give us a preview of some of that as well. And then in February and March, we'll be moving into sessions devoted to the spring election. Happy to say we've already got 3 of the 4 select board candidates booked, including Kat, who's on this morning. So we've got Kat and Rich Sidney and Kristen Pope all booked. We're still reaching out to Roger Scott, who's the 4th candidate. And then we're also looking to get the school committee candidates. And interestingly, there's a contested race for library trustees. So we might possibly have a session on that. Honestly, I don't know a whole lot about what library trustees do, and that would be interesting to hear. So, so that'll probably be the bulk of our time. 2 logistic questions I just wanted to ask the group. We typically take holidays off, but President's Day is not one that has at least a lot of local events going on. And given all the speakers we're trying to book, I'm just wondering if folks feel okay about having a coffee with a purpose on, I think it would be the 20th of February on President's Day. I'm seeing some nodding heads, so okay, we'll include that as a possibility. And of course, we've also been talking about trying to have these sessions in person, perhaps once a month. At one point, we were talking about the first Monday of the month. I don't think I'm really ready to do that in February, honestly. The last Monday of the month, as we know, is Elaine's 90th birthday. So the idea of having a little cake for Elaine at that in person is still intriguing. And maybe we can do that, although it would also be one of our select board candidate discussions. So I would have to at least check in with that particular candidate. I've forgotten right now who's booked, so more to come on that. But for the time being, we'll still stay virtual. Martin, you got your hand up.
We just have to consider that if we have one of the candidates on at the in-person, that's going to be really hard to record. So that really wouldn't be fair if we didn't have a recording of that session.
I was going to suggest that perhaps we defer the in-person stuff
till after the election,
during the period when we're, when we've got if we've got a candidate booked, that not be an in-person day, for exactly that reason, Martin, that it wouldn't be consistent.
Yeah. Okay. So we may have to push to the springtime. Speaking of spring, when is Springtown meeting? Does anybody know?
I don't know the exact date. It's on the town website.
I can look it up pretty quickly. It's the
usually 2 weeks after the election.
No,
I
that's
think it got moved.
That's
It's gonna be a little later.
It's after now.
They moved it a little bit to give more preparation time.
But the reason I ask is that I think folks found value in having at least one session as a preview of what's on the warrant.
It's the
So
25th, April 25th is the,
April, okay.
yeah.
Oh, so we have a little bit of
Yeah,
leeway
and I think we can discuss the strategy for discussing the articles, because one time we had Frank Foss on and that was very useful. And then last time we didn't, but we had our members kind of try to research things, and that was also good, although some things were covered well and some things weren't covered well. So well, maybe we could even do a combination. We could have Frank and then have another in-house discussion after, or something like
Yeah,
that.
yeah. I thought they were both useful sessions, so. Good, okay. Does anybody, anything else anyone wants to share before we adjourn for the morning?
Only one plug, if I can.
Yeah.
Since we've been talking about composting, if we get, it would be great to get everybody on the email list of this group to understand that if we have a few more residents sign up for composting with Black Earth, that it'll lower the price for everybody by about $20. So it'll go down below $100 from where it is now, I think, to $95 if we do that. And if we keep moving toward that, then, you know, the town eventually, I think, is going to get, you know, a push or a shove or whatever to go town-wide with it and begin to include it, which some towns, I think, have done. So I can get the exact number and send it to you, Doug, so you can put it in the email or something like that. But we've got over 1,000, I think, probably, you know, 1,200 or something by now. We need to get up a little higher to reach that threshold. So that'd be great.
Yeah, I heard
I
for
think,
1,500 some time ago, so I don't know if that's still accurate or not, but yeah.
Well, I've heard Jillian mention it recently.
Yeah, I think
So-
it might have been in her recent newsletter. I was
Yeah.
going to say, you know, one sort of thing that people don't necessarily consider that we found when we started doing the Black Earth composting was, you know, I used to put out one small blue trash bag every week, even if it wasn't full, only because there was stinky trash from food waste and I didn't want it in my house. But now that we do the compost and the trash doesn't smell, there are weeks when it's like, hey, we don't even fill up a small blue bag. We don't have to put a bag out this week. And given that you pay for the bag, that's an offset to the cost of paying for composting. So I think that can be a real help in, you know, people say, oh, I'm already stretched so tight, I can't afford another $100 a year. It's like, well, it isn't actually $100 a year. You know, you can potentially save some money through not generating so much stuff that you feel like you have to move to the curb every week.
I will point out that that's and maybe this is a twofer. That's a strategy that works when you're a strong recycler as
Yes.
well.
Yes, I am the recycling lunatic of the household, guilty as
Well, I
charged.
think we probably all are on this call, but maybe that's yet another inducement to recycle. That way you don't have to put because stuff there. Cool.
Even with a large dog that generates a lot of, you know what, I put a blue bag usually like once a month, believe it or not.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
You got us beat. Cool.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thanks everybody for joining. Sorry for skipping the introductions because Sabine probably would have been interesting to hear all of that, but where her time with us was limited, I just wanted to move on to all of her material. So.
Oh, and Carrie, while you're here, at some point I want to touch base with you on the concept of the repair cafe.
Interesting. I have a meeting today.
Oh, okay. So
Yeah.
maybe afterwards, touch base with you. We're pondering it related to Earth Day and.
Yeah, Debbie and I have talked. So yeah, thanks.
Okay, I don't want to
Oh.
take up a lot of time with the whole group,
Yeah,
but just
let's
to put you on
continue the
put me
conversation.
on your radar there.
Debbie, do you have time also? Just for a few minutes afterward? Yeah.